On November 6, 1895, New York society witnessed the wedding of the century. Consuelo Vanderbilt, the heiress to America's greatest railroad fortune, was marrying Charles Spencer Churchill, the 9th Duke of Marlborough. To the public, it was a fairy tale. To Consuelo, it was a prison sentence. She spent her wedding morning locked in her room, weeping so violently that she could barely walk down the aisle. She wasn't marrying for love. She was a pawn in a brutal game of social warfare. But what the Duke didn't realize was that American money comes with a price. And over the next 3 decades, this reluctant bride wouldn't just escape her golden cage. She would financially drain, publicly humiliate, and utterly break one of the oldest aristocratic empires in British history. This is the dark, true story of the Dollar Princess who brought a duke to his knees. Part 1. The weaponization of an heiress. To understand this story, we have to look at the woman who started it all. Alva Vanderbilt. Alva was a woman obsessed with power. She had the money, billions in today's dollars, from the Vanderbilt Railroad empire, but New York's old money elite looked down on her as new rich. Alva wanted ultimate validation, and she realized she could buy it using her daughter as currency. From childhood, Consuelo was groomed to be a trophy. Alva forced her to wear a steel rod strapped to her back for hours just to ensure perfect posture. She dictated her clothes, her friends, and her education. By 1895, Alva found the ultimate prize, the 9th Duke of Marlborough. The Duke had something America craved, a British royal title. But he had a massive problem. He was completely broke. His ancestral home, Blenheim Palace, was literally crumbling. The roof was leaking, the servants were unpaid, and the estate was facing total bankruptcy. The transaction was simple. Alva wanted a title. The Duke wanted Vanderbilt cash. There was just one problem. Consuelo was secretly engaged to an American man she actually loved. When Consuelo refused to marry the Duke, Alva didn't argue. She waged psychological warfare. She locked Consuelo in her bedroom. She intercepted her mail. And finally, she faked a heart attack, claiming that Consuelo's disobedience was literally killing her. Broken and manipulated, the 18-year-old Consuelo surrendered. Part 2. The multi-million-dollar transaction. Let's get straight to the numbers. Because this wasn't a marriage. It was a corporate merger. To secure the wedding, Consuelo's father handed the Duke a dowry of $2.5 million. In today's money, that is $90 million. But it didn't stop there. The agreement also granted the Duke an annual income of $100,000. For life. The moment the wedding ink dried, the Duke took the money and ran back to England. He didn't spend it on his new wife. He spent it on his palace. He hired hundreds of workers to rebuild Blenheim, brought back lost family art, filled the stables with elite horses, installed cutting-edge electricity. He used Consuelo's tears to fund his empire. But the honeymoon ended immediately. On their journey to England, the Duke coldly turned to Consuelo and delivered a brutal truth. He told her plainly that he did not love her. He told her he only married her to save his house. He then informed her that her only duty was to produce a male heir, so the Marlborough bloodline wouldn't die out. Consuelo was trapped, isolated in a cold estate, surrounded by a hostile British aristocracy who viewed her as nothing more than a wealthy American outsider. But the Duke severely underestimated his new Duchess. Part 3. The Rebel Duchess. Consuelo did her duty. She gave the Duke 2 sons. With the bloodline secured, Consuelo decided she was done playing the victim. If the Duke wasn't going to give her affection, she would take his power. Instead of sitting quietly in the palace, Consuelo used her wealth to build her own independent empire. She bypassed the Duke's authority and began funding radical social causes. She built schools. She opened hospitals. She fought aggressively for women's suffrage. The British public began to absolutely love her. She was charismatic, brilliant, and generous. The Duke, meanwhile, was seen as an arrogant, stiff snob. Consuelo was eclipsing him in his own country. Behind closed doors, the palace became a war zone. They stopped speaking. They ate meals in dead silence, communicating only through servants. By 1906, after 11 years of misery, Consuelo did something shocking for the era. She walked out. The separation sent shockwaves through global high society. The Duke was humiliated. But Consuelo didn't care. She moved to London, took her money with her, and lived a vibrant, independent life, leaving the Duke alone in his massive, empty palace. Part 4. The Final Blow. By 1920, both wanted a permanent divorce. But British law and high society made it nearly impossible. To completely break free, Consuelo needed an annulment from the Catholic Church. And this is where she delivered the ultimate revenge. In 1926, Consuelo dragged her mother, Alva, into a courtroom. Under oath, Alva was forced to publicly confess everything. She had to admit to the entire world that she had abused, locked up, and forced her daughter into a loveless marriage for a title. On the stand, Alva testified, "I forced my daughter to marry the Duke. I carried absolute authority in my family." The church granted the annulment. The marriage was legally wiped from existence, deemed invalid from day one. This destroyed the Duke's pride completely. Legally, it meant he had spent 30 years living off the money of a woman he was never truly married to. Even worse, the Vanderbilt money dried up. Without Consuelo's financial backing, the Duke's empire began to crack again. He grew bitter, isolated, and paranoid. He converted to Catholicism late in life, desperately seeking comfort for the ruin of his reputation. He died in 1934, remembered not as a great ruler, but as the man who sold his soul for American railroad cash. Consuelo, on the other hand, remarried, this time for actual love. She lived a long, wealthy life and wrote a best-selling memoir exposing the entire Gilded Age elite. The Duke got his palace, but the Dollar Princess got the last laugh. The marriage of Consuelo Vanderbilt proved that in the Gilded Age, everything had a price tag, even human lives. But it also proved that wealth couldn't always buy submission. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and subscribe to Gilded Remains for more fast-paced stories of historical greed, betrayal, and ruin. And let me know in the comments. Alva eventually claimed she regretted what she did to Consuelo. Do you believe her? Or was that just one final performance?